afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West, to the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's July 25th, 206th day of the year. 159 days remain to the year's over with. Holidays observances. National Hot Fudge Sunday Day. Oh, I love those things. There's a Sonic not too far from here. Wife and I used to go down there and have a couple. National Wine and Cheese Day. National Hire Veteran Day. Provide meaningful employment to veterans, which shows gratitude and dignity and gives a fresh start for those who've served their country. National System Administrator Appreciation Day. It's also Carousel Day. National Red Shoe Day. St. James TG is a celebration honoring St. James the Great, one of Jesus' 12 apostles, patron saint of Spain. Brings together a lot of folks to remember his dedication and significant role in spreading Christianity. Now, the main reason for celebrating St. James the Great includes honoring his evangelistic efforts in Spain, where he's believed to have preached and established the Christian faith. Also, remember for his martyrdom. He was the first apostle to be martyred. Dedication shown by St. James on his mission and his ultimate sacrifice resonates deeply with those who commemorate his life and his works. In Spain, particularly in regions like Galicia, St. James the Great celebrated with a great fervor. Festivities include church services, traditional music, street performances. Pilgrims around the world travel to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela, where his remains will leave the rest. The pilgrimage, known as the Way of St. James, has a rich layer of culture and spiritual significance to the celebration. Attracts a lot of folks who seek to walk in the footsteps and experience the historic journeys themselves. National Talking in Elevator Day. Break the apparent taboo and make new friends by striking up a conversation with somebody in an elevator. Then Ask an Archaeologist Day. International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent. International Day of Judicial Well-Being. Yes, let's celebrate God's anointed. Health and Happiness with Hypnosis Day. World Drowning Prevention Day. National Getting Early Day. National Thread and Needle Day. Look at your life and see if there's any areas where you might feel stuck between two paths. Culinarians Day. National Zookeeper Week. Comic-Con, which goes on July 27th. Gentse Fisting, which is the Ghent, Belgium celebration. Galway International Arts Festival, which goes on to the 27th. Darwin Show Day. Tour de France. Festival of British Archaeology. Love Parks Week. Big Butterfly Count. It's a method of monitoring environmental vitality. National Moth Week. National Parenting Gifted Children Week. And Everybody Deserves a Massage Week. Famous people born on this date: Matt LeBlanc and Emmett Till. Well, on that note, let's go see what's in the news. I guess everybody's heard that had a heart attack. Also, an interesting story popped up. Biden's former chief of staff revealed that Hillary Clinton raised the alarm about the former president's future. She said by 2024 he may not be able to run. Well, DeSantis was doing a memorial for Hulk Hogan. He's the governor of Florida, don't you know? And the heckler jumped up and started carrying on with a profane tirade against Alligator Alcatraz. And if my philosophy is, if you want to be so pro undocumented immigrants, we'll put you on the next plane that sends some of them back to their country. You can go and see if they think the world of you as you seem to think the world of them. James Carville responded to Hunter Biden's attack. Podcaster Joe Rogan suggested Hunter Biden might be a White House contender. Carville avoided addressing that issue. Hunter Biden actually bashed members of the Democratic Party in a 3-hour interview, which was released earlier this week. He was taken into task for not supporting his father in the 2024 election. During that interview, Biden lashed out at Carville, saying that Carville hadn't run a race in 40 effing years. Carville kind of overlooked the rant. Well, Brian Kohlberger, he pled guilty to murdering the 4 Idaho students, but there's still a lot of questions remain unanswered. He's a former criminology student himself. Actually, he was a TA. And he wiped devices and made a point not to leave any clues about his motive. For no known reason, he entered an off-campus rental house, 1122 King Road, about 4 in the morning, on November 13, 2022, and killed 4 undergrads living there. Madison Mogan, 21, Kaylee Calvez, 21, Zena Kernoodle, 20, and Ethan Chapin, 20. Nobody has any idea why he did it. According to Joshua Ritter, a Los Angeles defense attorney and Fox News contributor, Kohlberger had a few weeks head start to hide his tracks before he ever ended up on the radar of police. He was a 30-year-old former criminology PhD student. He wiped down everything, left no clues. 9-year-old died at Hershey Park's, the Boardwalk Water Park. Officials said lifeguards attempted to save the young man after noticing he was in distress. In a moment, the lifeguard recognized the child was in distress. They performed immediate rescue, followed by continuous coordinated life-saving efforts by both the lifeguards on site, first responders, and medical personnel. Took the child to Milton Hershey Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead. Well, the shooting in Ohio left 1 officer dead, 2 others injured. Ohio police have now identified the officer killed by the gunman. Lorraine police officer Philip Wagner, 35, killed during the shooting. 2 other unidentified officers were injured. The Michael Parker, 28 years old, was identified by the Lyra Police Department on Thursday as the man responsible for the significant gunfire officers were met with when responding to a call in Lorraine, Ohio. Call went out from an on-duty officer after a radio broadcast picked up from gunshots in the area of River Bend Drive. Other officers arrived at the location. Parker opened fire with a high-powered rifle, according to Lyra Police Chief James Welsh. Parker was ultimately killed during an exchange of gunfire that also hit 3 Lorraine officers. One of them, Officer Wagner, died. A lot of senseless shooting going on these days. Well, Ozzy Osbourne had a rare form of Parkinson that has raised questions about lifestyle factors. According to one expert, a combination of genetic variant and environmental factors may have contributed to the disease progress. He died Tuesday at 76. He was the lead singer of Black Sabbath. Been open about his condition for the last several years. First discussed it during an appearance on ABC's Good Morning America in 2019. Well, Red Sox fans were encouraged to avoid food, drink purchases during the first ever strike at historic Fenway Park. Fenway Park's 113 years old, never been a labor strike. But going to be one now. Fans are encouraged to purchase their preferred beverage or food item outside the gates of the park. Concession workers threatened to go on strike. Red Sox were idle Thursday after wrapping up a road trip. The team comes home from a game against Los Angeles Dodgers on Friday. Last month, Aramac employees and members of Unite Here, Local 26, voted in favor of labor strike. The Aramark employees at Fenway Park and MGM Music Hall are represented by the Unite Here, Local 26 labor union. Staff are represented by the union include cooks and barbacks and souvenir vendors, utility workers and cashiers and others who work at the ballpark and the nearby music hall. Well, those who followed wrestling are talking about 5 unforgettable Hulk Hogan matches that they say defined wrestling history. Now, he was a wrestling icon and made professional wrestling what it is today. He died Thursday at age 71. And discovered and backed by Vince McMahon. He was the founder of Hulkamania. It ran wild for decades in and out of the ring. Hogan wrestled through the early 2000s, provided generations of fans with unforgettable moments. Probably the best known match he had was with Andre the Giant at the Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan in 1997. That match ended with a legendary scoop slam by Hogan. He picked up and slammed Andre to the canvas. At that point in time, Andre weighed 525 pounds. Then Hogan finished up with his signature leg drop and pinned Andre. To that point in time, Andre was considered unbeatable. Well, then in WrestleMania 6, Hogan squared off with the Ultimate Warrior. Amazingly enough, Ultimate Warrior won, giving Hogan his first clean pinfall loss since 1981. Then in WrestleMania 7, the patriotic Hogan faced Sergeant Slaughter, whose character had been called an Iraqi sympathizer during the Gulf War. During the match, Slaughter attempted to pin Hogan while waving an Iraqi flag, but Hogan kicked out and ripped the flag and defeated Sergeant Slaughter at that point in time. And then, of course, in 1996, during the so-called Bash at the Beach, Hogan became a heel, formed the NWO with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, the mystery partner, won a tag team match against Randy Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger at the Daytona Beach WCW event. Out of nowhere, Hogan hit Randy Savage with not one but two leg drops, revealing he was the third partner, and that was when they formed the New World Order. You know, the fascinating thing, it's some of the best showmanship anywhere. And with Hogan dead, it takes something out of wrestling. Now in WrestleMania 8, you had Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. It's actually WrestleMania X8. Now, Hogan made sporadic appearances in the WWF and also the WWE in the early 2000s. WWE was pushing Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to be its next top star. Well, in that match at Toronto's Rogers Center, The Rock won, but after the match, they shared multiple embraces and the crowd went nuts. Well, newly discovered declassified documents literally destroy the Russian collusion hoax. It was the initial dossier was paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign and then used by Barack Obama to attack President Trump. They claimed that he won the 2016 election only with the help of Russia. Lawmakers are revealing the Mandami's plan for the government to own the grocery stores is going to cost taxpayers $15 million. The HR chief called on Coldplay's Kiss Cam with the married CEO at Astronomers resigned. You know, the little pundits, such as the Washington Post and New York Times, insist that Colbert's cancellation is due to an obsolete format, not politics. Late night programs face extinction as viewers abandon traditional TV viewing habits. I mean, we used to have the TV on 24/7. Now, usually, we're on either the computer or on the iPads. But the New York Times guest essay by Punk Media founding partner William Cohan and a column by the Washington Post, Megan McArdle, insists that Colbert's show was losing viewers and money due to people moving away from traditional TV. That and not Colbert's politics are the thing that got his show canceled. The left has been insisting that it was part of the deal with Paramount and President Trump's suit that got Colbert's show canceled. Well, two illegal immigrants have been charged in New York City's shooting of an off-duty CBP officer. Miguel Francisco Nor Nunez and Christian Ibar Barora facing charges in connection with the shooting on Saturday. CBP, for those that are not familiar, is U.S. Customs and Border Patrol officer. They were arrested after the shooting at Fort Washington Park on Saturday. Where Nunez, 21, was charged with one count of possession of ammunition by an illegal alien that carries a maximum sentence of 15 years in prison. And Ibar Barora, 22, is charged as an accessory after the fact. Well, both of these individuals were in the country illegally. The officer had fired back and hit Laura Nunez before he fled on a motorbike driven by Ibar Barora, who transported the gunman to a hospital. Former Congressman George Santos has delivered a glamorous farewell before going to prison. He's one of only 6 members of the House of Representatives that have been expelled. From the halls of Congress to the chaos of cable news, what a ride it's been, he said. Former New York Congressman is expected to report to federal custody Friday to begin serving an 87-month sentence after pleading guilty in 2020 for wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. He was assessed the maximum sentence in April by U.S. District Judge Joanne Sabert. Also wanted to pay nearly $374,000 in restitution and forfeit more than $205,000 in fraud proceeds. His guilty plea followed a sweeping investigation into campaign finance fraud, donor identity theft, and false COVID-era unemployment claims. A lot of folks got a lot of money with COVID-related loans. Bodies of 3 men have been recovered from the Mississippi River after swimming and fishing on a sandbar. The victims ranged in age from their 20s to their 50s, reported missing Thursday near a boat ramp. It was at the Beeman-Shelby Forest State Park, about 13 miles north of Memphis, according to authorities. Search and rescue teams with the Shelby County Sheriff's Office and other Memphis area agencies began looking for the man Tuesday evening. Had to call off the search because of dark. Search included aircraft and rescue boats and drones and the use of sonar. First 2 bodies were recovered about 11 a.m. and Wednesday morning. Third about 12:45. The victims, who authorities said were all Hispanic, were identified as Marlon Mendez, 28, Rudy Perez, 31, and Jose Yanes, 52. They'd been fishing and swimming on a sandbar. That's a natural ridge of sand formed when fast-moving water slows and deposits sediment. In rivers like the Mississippi, sandbars can be unstable and collapse under the weight of shifting currents. But it had been a popular area, even though it was considered treacherous. All right. Well, I used to be out every week on my metal detector. I found all kinds of unusual things. And some of the best archaeological discoveries in history were initially made by metal detectorists. Well, one metal detector's feeling led to the finding of a massive Roman settlement at a popular tourist hotspot. When the feeling was followed up on by archaeologists, they discovered a 2,000-year-old villa, limestone buildings, and Iron Age ring ditches at the Gloucestershire site in England. Turns out what was discovered was actually a Roman settlement that prior to that had not been known. Settlement dates back 2,000 years. It was inhabited between the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. The excavators also found the remnants of Roman building materials, ceramic roofing, painted wall plaster, and box flue tiles. Who knows what they're going to find as they dig further? Well, royal experts claim that Harry and Meghan are going to face a major blow as their Netflix partnership is apparently crumbling. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex signed a streaming agreement in 2020 after they stepped down as senior royals. But if it ends, they'll have to find something else to do. According to experts, the Sussex's star attraction have taken a severe nosedive. And on the appearance, Harry is not happy and being on the outs with his king father. Well, let's see if we got anything else. Well, here's an interesting story. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, the buffets are busier than ever. The experts, yes, there are buffet experts, say the best way to beat the long wait, arrive early, do weekday visits, and join all the loyalty programs you can join with the casinos. And I'll have to say, during our visits, I have found some outstanding buffets. As summer travel with Las Vegas booms, a lot of visitors are, of course, lining up to indulge in the city's buffets. From the Bacchanal buffet at Caesar's Palace to the buffet at Wynn, crowds packed in lines at these eateries, making it difficult for others to get in. Yeah. All right, on that note, we want to hit our stories. And there's no end to the interesting stories that I stumbled across. You know, something I heard about when I was still on extra duty was the beginning of what was called the invisible burn. And to understand what that is, you have to use your imagination for a moment. Imagine standing outside without any reason your skin starts to burn. There's no fire, no projector, no visible source, but within seconds it feels like your body's roasting from the inside out. Well, that's not a science fiction idea by any means. It's the active denial system, or ADS, a real operational weapon developed by the U.S. military. Others call it the heat ray. It's designed to make crowds scatter. Individuals retreat and skin scream without leaving a single visible wound. The Pentagon has publicly acknowledged the existence of the active denial system, but its deployment records and incident reports remain classified. Its full capability is still shrouded in silence. Now, the idea for the active denial system began in the 1990s in a push for non-lethal weapon systems that could disperse crowds or disable threats without resorting to bullets or projectiles or explosives. So the weapon became a joint project involving the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory, Raytheon Technologies, and the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate. Didn't know we had one of those. Well, in the early 2000s, the U.S. Department of Defense had a prototype. It was a vehicle-mounted weapon that used 95 gigahertz millimeter wave radiation. That's a frequency far higher than cell phones or microwave ovens. The beam penetrates only the top 1/64th of an inch of human skin. But in just 2 seconds, it creates an unbearable sensation of burning, triggering an immediate flight response. Now, it was designed to be non-lethal. In other words, no lasting tissue damage, no permanent harm, just overwhelming and instant pain. Now, in 2007, the Pentagon held a controlled demonstration at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. Reporters, military volunteers, and government officials experienced the beam firsthand. And they had immediate reactions, flinching and screaming and fleeing. According to David Martin, a CBS News employee, after he tested the beam on camera, it felt like opening an oven door multiplied by 10. He said, I had to get out. Officials claim the weapon safe and undergone extensive testing on more than 10,000 human subjects, all of whom reported no lasting injury. So the ADS was hailed as a revolutionary tool for peacekeeping and border control and riot suppression. Interestingly enough, with all this positive hoopla, it vanished for public use. Despite its early publicity, there's been no major confirmed deployments publicly disclosed since that demonstration at Moody Air Base in 2007. Multiple units reportedly sent to Iraq in 2010, but never used in the field. 2020, during protests at Lafayette Square in Washington, D.C., whistleblowers revealed the U.S. military police had requested an ADS, but it was either never delivered or the request was denied. According to Major Adam DeMarco, U.S. Army National Guard, when he testified to Congress in 2020, I was asked about the heat ray. I responded that D.C. National Guard didn't have that equipment. So while the ADS is not secret, its real-world use cases are. Nearly all deployment or test records remain classified. Now, critics, of course, believe the silence is strategic. A weapon that causes intense pain with no trace walks a thin line between non-lethal and inhumane. Human rights organizations, including the ACLU and Amnesty International, have raised concerns about the potential for torture and misuse or covert abuse in military prisons, border operations, and crowd control scenarios. Psychological effects are also unknown. Some early volunteers in testing programs later reported heightened anxiety or skin sensitivity that lasted for weeks, though no official studies have been released. In 2024, the Department of Defense still refers to the ADS as an ongoing area of interest in non-lethal defense. But since 2021, there have been few, if any, public updates. Systems now rumored to exist in smaller portable formats, including backpack versions and drones equipped with millimeter wave emitters. But these claims, like the device itself, operate in a cloud of partial truth and redacted reality. Now, the frequency is 95 gigahertz millimeter wave radiation. The range is about 700 yards, a little over 640 meters. Penetration depth is 0.4 millimeters of skin. Reaction time pain is said to occur within 2 seconds. Instinctual retreat almost guaranteed. Power supply, which was originally vehicle mounted, the current units are rumored to include mobile and portable units. Now, the idea is to overwhelm the senses, not destroy the body. But even the U.S. military admits that exposure around 3 to 5 seconds can cause burns. That razor-thin margin between control and damage may be one reason it's rarely used openly. But don't get me wrong, the ADS is real. The science is sound. The pain is proven. But what does remain hidden is how and where it's being used. In an area where digital surveillance is visible and kinetic warfare is televised, the literal perfect weapon may be one you don't see. One that doesn't leave a scar, a bullet wound, or any blood. Just a sensation that forces you to run without knowing why. So at the end of the day, the Army's heat ray is not a science fiction. Oh no, it's science, quietly weaponized. For more information, the U.S. Department of Defense, the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Program, they have a fact sheet dated 2008. CBS News did a story on the Pentagon unveils the heat ray weapon, January 2007. Wired magazine knows a story about the pain ray ready for Iraq, dated January 25, 2007. And the National Institute of Justice Non-Lethal Weapons Research and Policy Reports did an article. Congressional testimony from Major Adam DeMarco, September 2020, about the Lafayette Square incident. Raytheon Technologies They had an archived product page about the ADS system overview. Then in popular science, they have the science behind the heat ray in 2010. And Amnesty International reports concerned use of non-lethal directed energy weapons. That report was in 2011. Well, from heat rays, let's talk about what amounted to a poison nobody ever knew about. It was between 1945 and 1947. The world was celebrating the end of World War II. America stood triumphant as a nuclear power. Dozens of hospital patients across the U.S. were being injected with plutonium, one of the most radioactive substances known to mankind. Now, these weren't soldiers. Oh, no. They weren't scientists. They were unsuspecting civilians. They never gave their consent to be injected. They were never told the truth. Well, they never knew they'd been used as radiation test subjects until long after they were dead. It will take over 50 years for the truth to come out. Now, as the Manhattan Project, which was the project that created the atomic bomb, raced to build the first atomic bomb, a parallel question emerged. What exactly would happen if plutonium entered the human body? Well, it turned out nobody knew. Plutonium had only recently been synthesized in 1940, and the biological effects were still untested. But the bomb-building efforts at Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Hanford were producing large amounts of that element. Workers are being exposed. So the U.S. government wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. So in 1944, Dr. Stafford Warren, Chief Medical Officer at the Manhattan Project, authorized a classified medical research program to study how the human body absorbed, stored, and excreted radioactive isotopes. And as test subjects, they used real humans. So began the plutonium injection experiments. Well, 18 patients were selected from hospitals in Rochester, New York, Chicago, Illinois, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and San Francisco, California. They were chosen not because they volunteered, but because doctors believed they were terminally ill and wouldn't be aware of the fact they never consented. One investigator in the letter said they were treated like laboratory animals. Each patient was injected with between 1 and 100 micrograms of plutonium-238 or plutonium-239. The amounts carefully measured to track how the body handled internal contamination. Blood, urine, feces, and eventually bone samples are collected over time. No therapeutic purpose for this program was ever offered by scientists. And the subjects weren't told they were part of an experiment. In a lot of cases, their charts were marked with false diagnosis. One of the first and most infamous subjects was Ed Cade, a 53-year-old African-American cement worker admitted to Oak Ridge Hospital in April of 1945 after a car accident. He had multiple broken bones. But otherwise, he was in stable condition. Without his knowledge, he was injected with 4.7 micrograms of plutonium. Doctors then delayed setting his fractures for 20 days to allow him to collect uncontaminated excretion samples. He kept under observation while samples were taken from his urine and feces. They even extracted his teeth without his consent. Well, eventually, he grew suspicious about what was going on and escaped the hospital. Lived 8 more years, never knowing he'd been made the first American guinea pig for internal plutonium exposure. In total, there were 18 known individuals injected with plutonium, others subjected to uranium, polonium, and radioactive calcium exposures in similar classified experiments during the same time period. Among those patients were a 55-year-old woman in Chicago, falsely told she had a bone condition. There was a 24-year-old soldier recovering from a leg injury, and several elderly hospital patients who had non-terminal conditions. None of them were informed about the experiments. None were compensated. The families were never told. Researchers documented everything with scientific precision and sealed the reports under military classifications. Well, the story remained hidden until the 1990s, when investigative journalist Eileen Wilson uncovered the details through declassified documents, eventually publishing a Pulitzer Prize-winning series in the Albuquerque Tribune in 1993. The reporting triggered a federal investigation into President Bill Clinton, my cousin. In 1994, the government formed the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments to review the U.S. Cold War-era human testing program. The committee's final report, released in 1995, confirmed the details of the plutonium experiments and publicly acknowledged that in no case was informed consent obtained. The experiments violated the rights and dignity of the individuals involved. In October 1995, Bill Clinton issued a formal apology. He said the U.S. government did something profoundly wrong, deeply profoundly morally wrong. While some surviving family members of test subjects got financial settlements, most never did. Plutonium injection experiments are not a conspiracy theory. They are documented actual history. They were conducted in the name of national security, built on secrecy, deception, silence. They remind us the line between science and humanity is not one of technology, but of ethics. These volunteers never volunteered, or these victims never volunteered, rather. They never understood the risk they were undergoing. Most went to their graves not knowing what had been done to them. And that kind of secrecy doesn't just stain history, it scorches it. Now, if you want more information on this program, if you want to find out if your relatives might have been involved, check the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments final report. You can find it on the internet. It's dated 1995. Eileen Wilson did the Plutonium Files, America's Secret Medical Experiments in the Cold War, published in 1999. Albuquerque Tribune, Pulitzer Prize-winning series on plutonium experiments from 1993. And there's the U.S. Department of Energy declassified documents on the Manhattan-era human experimentation. And of course, NPR has the Plutonium Files, Legacy of Cold War Radiation Testing from 2000. Los Angeles Times had the story on Clinton apologizes for radiation test, October 1995. U.S. National Archives, Record Group 326, Manhattan Project Medical Experiments. It's interesting to note that our government, for the best of reasons, quite often does the worst of things. The sad thing is, everything is done for what is considered a good cause. And the sad, truly sad part of it, nobody considers the long-running outcome. Let's talk about one of Israel's most profound wartime mysteries, the enigma of the lamed hay. Now, Danish philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said to understand life backward, but to live it forward. That's what he called the tragic essence of human existence. It's also a fitting summation of the enigmatic story of the lamed hay. That's Hebrew for 35. A tale that has haunted Israeli history since the early days of the nation's struggle for independence. It was January 15, 1948, 4 months before the declaration of the State of Israel. Israel Emir, the commander of the Jerusalem area, dispatched an augmented platoon of 38 fighters to the besieged Gush Etzion block. Now, this was a dangerous mission. The region was teeming with hostile forces, and the terrain was very unforgiving. As they embarked on their nocturnal journey, one soldier sprained his ankle. So, following protocol, 2 comrades escorted him back to their base at Hartov. The remaining 35 pressed on, never reached their destination. All of them died in a fierce battle against hundreds of Arab combatants. And for decades, this story was enshrined as a heroic myth, a narrative of valor, sacrifice that served as a moral beacon for educating Israeli youth, likened to the modern-day Masada, symbolizing unwavering resolve in the face of insurmountable odds. David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, described the battle for Gush Etzion and the fate of the lamed hay as the great and terrible epic of the Jewish war. But in 1983, Dr. Yuri Milstein, a historian and philosopher specializing in Israel's War of Independence, challenged this long-held perception. He published a series of provocative articles suggesting the episode was a needless disaster that resulted from strategic errors and misjudgments. Milstein's assertions sparked intense debate and raised fundamental questions about the nature of historic truth, the responsibilities of leadership, and the ethical imperatives of wartime decision-making. Now, this exploration delved into the multifaceted dimensions of the lamed hay enigma by examining the historical context, the differing perspectives, and the philosophical underpinnings. We try to uncover the human faces behind the mystery and get a deeper understanding of this pivotal moment in Israeli history. Now, to fully grasp the complexities of the lamed hay episode, it's essential to understand the tumultuous backdrop against which it unfolded. The period between the United Nations partition plan for Palestine on November 29, 1947, the official declaration of the State of Israel, May 14, 1948. This period was marked by escalating tensions and sporadic violence. British Mandate authorities were still present in Palestine, maintaining a tenuous grip on a land teetering toward conflict. And both Jewish and Arab communities were preparing for an imminent struggle, each attempting to secure strategic positions before the anticipated withdrawal of the British forces. Jewish leadership, under the auspices of the Hudnall, the main Jewish paramilitary organization, was determined to protect and reinforce isolated settlements, particularly those of critical strategic value. Now, Gush Etzion, a cluster of 4 Jewish settlements located between Jerusalem and Hebron, of significant strategic importance. Positioned along the main route connecting these 2 key cities, it will serve as a barrier against potential Arab reinforcements from the south. And for the Jewish community, Gush Etzion was not just a military asset, but also a symbol of pioneering spirit and perseverance. The Arab forces, recognizing the tactical advantage of controlling this area, were equally resolute in their efforts to seize it. Surrounding Arab villages were largely hostile, and the region had become a hotspot for attacks on Jewish convoys and settlements. Siege of Gush Etzion intensified the urgency felt by the Jewish leadership to provide aid and reinforcements to the beleaguered settlers. I can't talk. January 14, 1948, Gush Etzion came under a massive attack by about 2,000 Arab fighters. The settlers, though vastly outnumbered, managed to repel the assault, inflicting significant casualties on the attackers. But the situation, of course, remained precarious. Shortage of ammunition, medical supplies, and even manpower. Settlements' communications were compromised, and the fear of a renewed attack was constant. Israel Emir faced an excruciating dilemma. Ignoring the pleas for assistance could result in the fall of Gush Etzion, a loss that would have been both strategic and psychological ramifications. Conversely, sending a relief force to hostile territory did pose immense risk. After consulting with his senior officers, including Zevi Zamir, later become the head of Mossad, Amir decided to send an augmented platoon to Gush Etzion. This augmented platoon comprised 38 fighters, including members of the Palmach, the Elite Strike Force at Haganah, and the HISH, the Field Corps. The men were equipped with significant cache of weapons and ammunition, including bread and light machine guns, submachine guns, rifles, grenades, a considerable arsenal by the standards of the time. The Lamed Hay, and maybe Lamed Hay, I'm not sure, was not a homogeneous military unit, but rather a composite force assembled under pressing circumstances. The men came from diverse backgrounds with varying levels of military experience. There were students from Hebrew University of Jerusalem, craftsmen, immigrants, and native-born Israelis, known as the Sabras. Ages ranged from the youngest at 16 and a half to the oldest at 37. And leading this composite platoon was Danny Mass, a seasoned Palmach officer who had recently served as commander of Gush Etzion. He was known for his exceptional leadership skills, bravery, and deep commitment to the Zionist cause. His familiarity with the terrain and strategic significance of the mission made him a logical choice to command this relief force. Now, the platoon included individuals with compelling personal stories, such as Yusuf Baruch, born to a Sephardic family in Amsterdam, orphaned by the Holocaust, served in the British Army during World War II. When he got to Palestine, he struggled with personal loss but remained committed to the Jewish cause. Benny Sailor Ugaluzgavi, born in Ottawa, Canada, served in the U.S. Navy before deserting to join the Jewish struggle in Palestine. His journal actually symbolized international dimensions of Zionist support. Amnon Mikhali, just 16 and a half, he lied about his age to enlist. Grew up without a father and supported his family from a young age. His determination reflected the youthful idealism of the time. The attempt to reach Gush Etzion on the night of January 14th was aborted due to navigational difficulties and a risk of daylight exposure. The next night, they set out from Hartub, taking a different route that was approximately 25 kilometers long and passed through rugged mountainous terrain dominated by the hostile Arab villages. Well, as they moved through the darkness, one soldier, Israel Grafney, sprained his ankle, and Danny Mass ordered two comrades to escort him back to Hartub. Trio's safe return underscored the perilousness of the mission and isolation of those who continued on. Well, unbeknownst to the members of the platoon, their movements had not gone unnoticed. Various accounts suggest local Arab villagers spotted the platoon, alerted by early rising shepherds or women gathering wood. Some reports even hint at the involvement of a British police officer who may have tipped off Arab forces. Well, as dawn broke, the platoon found itself near the Arab villages of Sarif and Jabba. Elements of darkness that had offered concealment were slipping away. Surrounded by the hills and exposed terrain, the platoon was ambushed by large Arab forces numbering in the hundreds. Well, despite being vastly outnumbered and outgunned, the 35 soldiers fought with extraordinary bravery. Eyewitness accounts, including those collected after the Six-Day War in 1967, attest to the ferocity of their resistance. They held their ground for hours, inflicting casualties on the attackers. When their ammunition ran low, they destroyed their weapons to prevent them from falling in enemy hands. Some, like the last surviving fighter, believed to be Yaakov Cohen, started throwing rocks before being overwhelmed. Battle was brutal and unforgiving. All 35 soldiers were killed. Bodies were later retrieved and brought to Gush Etzion by a British officer under a flag of truce. The loss was a devastating blow to the Jewish community, both emotionally and strategically. Well, the immediate aftermath of this massacre saw an outpouring of grief and admiration. The 35 were hailed as heroes who had sacrificed their lives in defense of the nation. Poet Haim Guri penned the Here Our Bodies Lie, a poignant tribute that became a staple for memorial ceremonies. And the narratives of the 35 become a symbol, emblematic of selfless valor, inspiring generations to come. And for 35 years, the story remained largely unchallenged, embedded in the memory of a testament to courage and dedication. But in 1983, historian Dr. Yuri Milstein published a series of articles that stirred controversy and provoked intense debate. He argued that tragedy wasn't an unavoidable consequence of war, but a preventable disaster resulting from flawed decision making and operational errors. His critique focused on several key points. This is a non military type Monday morning quarterbacking what happened in the field. I've seen that many, many times. He questioned the necessity of the mission. He suggested the urgency to send reinforcements was overstated. He argued the situation at Gush Etzion, while dire, didn't warrant the risk involved in dispatching a platoon through hostile territory without adequate preparation. He criticized leadership decisions. He pointed to operational flaws, highlighted the lack of cohesive unit formation, noting the platoon was comprised of soldiers who didn't know each other. He said there was inadequate intelligence and planning, and there was also the possibility of information leaks. He raised the possibility the mission details were leaked, maybe through the British channels to Arab forces. Well, of course, the critiques leveled by Milstein were met with strong rebuttals from the principal figures involved: Israel Amir, Zevi Zamir, and Uzi Narkis. They defended their actions and the decisions made. Their counter-arguments included contextualizing the decision, defending the platoon's composition, challenging claims of operational negligence, rebutting the leak theory, and they contended his analysis suffered from hindsight bias, applying standards and knowledge that wasn't available at the time. Well, the debate over the 35 encapsulates broader philosophical questions about historical interpretation and ethics of leadership during wartime. And then, of course, we have to remember the human faces behind what took place. And the enigma of the 35 remains a poignant chapter in Israeli history. It's a story that encapsulates heroism and tragedy and the complex interplay of decisions made under the shadow of war. And the debate ignited by Milstein's reassessment served as a reminder of the challenges inherent in interpreting historical events. As Kierkegaard suggests, understanding life backward may offer insights, but also confronts us with limitations of hindsight. The past is a tapestry woven from innumerable threads of human experience and choices. As we reflect on the 35, it's essential to honor the memory of those who gave their lives while engaging thoughtfully with the historical record. At the end of the day, while examination of things that happened in the field is certainly important, for those to discount the activities of those who were there on the ground is absolutely ludicrous. I don't care what academic credentials Dr. Milstein might have. Did he have the military training and the experience to determine what may or may not have taken place on the ground? Well, on that note, we've come to the end of today's show. I'll leave you with it to consider. Until Monday at this time, since this is Friday, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great evening.